here. How do you view the Akashic records? I use 2 variants. Are you asking me how like I view my own Akashic records, or how I view other people's Akashic records, or how I got into it? If you could give me like a little bit more like specificity, just so I make sure I answer in the correct way, I would appreciate it. Actually, I just made 2 videos about astral traveling on my main page if y'all want to get more into that. The word variance is a very interesting word. I think that, has anybody ever seen the show Loki? I think that's where I remember the word variance. They call him like a variant. I'm just waiting for your response if you're still in here, and then we'll go to something else. Okay. Interesting. Yours and others. I know it's a deep topic, but I want to take up much. I love talking about the Akashic records. I could talk about that the whole 45 minutes. So I'm gonna be on here. So how I got into the Akashic records is, one, you have to be more open to your imagination and creativity, because there's a lot of us that are very like stressed in our adult anxious life, and it kicks on your fight or flight in your central nervous system, and it's very hard to be up in the upper realms like the records if you are stressed and anxious and have like a lot of ruminating thoughts, catastrophizing thoughts, self-limiting beliefs like running in the background. So that's why subconscious mindset reprogramming and working on, you know, your spiritual awakening healing journey is so important, so that you can access those like deeper multidimensional layers within self. And so a couple different steps here. So first one I would say is doing children's meditations. Like if you go on YouTube, there's this lady, her name is New Horizons. You don't have to do hers, but there's like a whole bunch of different children's ones. Not specifically for your inner children, but just to get you in more of a mind state of what is possible for you and ability to access. Because a lot of us are like way too in our analytical and logical mindset. And so when we access the Akashic records or those higher states of consciousness, it could be very scary because you're not used to that frequency, or you override it and say like, oh, that's not real, right? And so you kind of like zip yourself out of that state. So getting more in like that childlike state of consciousness, like mindset of like, oh, anything is possible. It really helps you like open up the window to accessing like your past lives and just doing a whole assortment of things. So that's the first place I would start. I gotta take this necklace off. Hold on. Okay. The second thing that I would do is learn how to access your theta brainwave states and your delta brainwave states. Let me pull up this picture. Okay. Hopefully y'all can see this. Okay. So most adults are living in beta and these like higher states of stress and anxiety. Hold on, I gotta get somebody out of here. A spammer. Okay. So most of us are experiencing beta brainwave states. This is where like we're catastrophizing in our central nervous system, fight or flight and all this stuff. In order to access your Akashic records, you need to be down here in theta states and the delta waves, because that's like the energy of like right before you're about to fall asleep, and right when you're gonna wake up, you're like super, 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 super relaxed. Like we have to be in that state of being in order to access your Akashic records or to like astral travel. And so I would recommend checking out Joe Dispenza. He talks about that topic very much in depth. Like that is where I learned how to do that consciously. Okay, because now I like when I give Akashic record readings, it's not a whole process. Like I can just like immediately get there with people, right? I don't have to do like some wild ritual, which I used to have to do. Like I used to have to follow a very specific ritual to like shift my consciousness over. Now I can just have a conversation with somebody and like access that within them. But it's because oh, thank y'all for the follow. But it's because I learned how to regulate my brain waves, like consciously. Now, how did I do that? Okay, so that, thank y'all. That can be done by meditation. And a lot of neurodivergent people struggle with meditation. because we got too many file tabs open, just like running constantly. Like you cannot stop the thoughts, okay? And so I suggest doing active meditations. Hey Nicole, hey! I'm gonna get back to your voice note soon. I suggest doing active meditations because if we are doing something that is moving our body, we can get into that flow state and like drop the thoughts, but we can't just sit there in the silence. Like now I can, but that's a muscle that you have to build, like to be able to sit and not have the thoughts ruminating, okay, especially if you are neurodivergent. What is active meditation? Oh, we will get into it. Okay. Yeah, that's what I meant about 2 variations, longhand, shorthand style, vibing with it. Yeah, I know I'm going on like a long process journey right now about what the records are. Okay, so active meditation looks like you washing the dishes and meditating. Like you really focusing on like the activity that you're doing to get out of your mind, and you get in like the creative flow of the universe and like the quantum field because you're focusing on the thing that you're doing. So like people do that running, or you can do it while stretching, you can do it while dancing and listening to music. You're just coming in with that physical activity with the intention of disconnecting from your thoughts, and it keeps your body like busy, so your ADHD like disconnects a little bit because it has something to focus on. And so active meditations were much more beneficial for me than sitting in silence. Yeah, drawing or artwork. Yes, painting, like something that is invoking your physical senses while you are meditating. It's just getting into the flow state. And listen, meditation is not, you're not trying to get rid of your thoughts. Like the thoughts are going to be there. Okay, it's more about detaching from them, and it's about not going down the thought loops. Like, you know, when you go on a nice walk and you're just like fully immersed into the experience, that's what meditation is about. It doesn't mean that the thoughts don't come up, because like we're human, that's just going to happen. It's more about, can you disconnect and fully immerse in the here and now? And when the thoughts come up, we just let them go by like clouds, not attaching to them. Like not thinking about the grocery store trip that we need to take, not thinking about putting gas in the car. We're just like, nope, gonna deal with that later. Okay, because in order to access your Akashic records, you can't be thinking about that stuff. You can't be down in 3D human land, like trying to connect into multidimensional versions of self. And I'm not saying that you need to like fully disconnect from human self, but you just need to be in a more immersive state of consciousness in order to access those things. How do you keep yourself awake? That's a good one, because when I first started doing Akashic record meditations, I would fall asleep every single time. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you are doing something wrong, because sometimes when you're in those theta delta waves, like your body is still receiving and getting into the Akashic records. Like some things need to be done on your chakra system and your subconscious mind and your light field. And so you're still getting benefits from it even if you fall asleep. Like sometimes you need to do very deep quantum healing in order to like raise your frequency and your vibration up to a point where you can do it consciously awake. So like don't be hard on yourself if you're like falling asleep. But sitting up is a great one to do, and active meditations, right? And the Akashic records take time and practice to get used to that frequency and that vibration. Like when I first started reading for myself, I couldn't be in that state for a very long time. Like, or even when I'm giving sessions with people, like I cap out at 2 hours is too much, but I can get into somebody's records for 90 minutes and hold the frequency. That's it though. I cannot do more than 90 minutes, but that's me doing it for years. Okay, because you're in like this very, 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 very high frequency. And so you're not meant to sit in your records for like super long time periods, if you will. Okay. Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. History is inherently, if you're trying to access your records to heal your inner children with trauma stuff or past lives with trauma stuff, like you have to like go into the trauma. Like we can't be sitting in there for like hours, right? Like it's something you have to like acclimate yourself to and learn how to like detach from the trauma in order to like process it. And you also need to learn how to process your emotions on a very deep level in order to handle things like that, if that makes sense. So it's just like a process and a journey. So listening to children's meditations to like open up your imagination and creativity, doing active meditations to be able to regulate your brain waves, and drop automatically into delta and theta states, very beneficial. Just watching videos about the Akashic Records is really great too, because like the more that you hear about a certain topic and from different perceptual lenses, it helps integrate into your subconscious and helps you have deeper understandings. So like listen to multiple people talk about it. It's a very personal journey, right? Like it's very, you have to go within self and experience that, but just hearing it from different people is helpful. Kind of like if you're trying to heal your money mindset, like, yeah, it's going to be beneficial for you to listen to one teacher, but then it's going to be way more beneficial for you to listen to like a whole bunch of different people because they all have different perspective lenses and experiences. Oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. I want to go back up here and see if I missed any questions. Yeah, it doesn't have to be working out to do an active meditation. It can be you taking a shower. It can be you painting, putting a Lego set together. Like if you have ADHD or you have PTSD and you have a lot of catastrophizing and self-limiting beliefs and all the stuff that's like running amok in your mind, it's going to be much more beneficial for you to do an active meditation than trying to sit still for an hour. Okay. And again, if y'all have questions about your spiritual awakening journey, I'm doing like a impromptu Q&A, so just drop them in the chat and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Some of the things that I put to like focus on today was like spiritual gifts, manifesting, expanding your wealth consciousness, opening up or growing your spiritual business. Those are all things that I help people with in my business. Okay. So I fall asleep standing up and then go out super easy, and sometimes I'm receiving messages while I do. Oh, hey Kat. But I'm not sure what I'm doing exactly. It's weird. Okay, so I fall asleep standing up and go out super easy. Yeah, I mean, the more that you get used to being in theta state, the more consciously that you can hold a rein on it. Like when I was doing subconscious mindset reprogramming and learning to access the records, I would fall asleep every single time because you're having to drop in this like very slippery state of reality where you're like about to fall asleep. Okay, so if that's happening to you, but you're still kind of like consciously awake, it means it's a really good sign. It means you're making progress. So like now I can go lay down on my bed and like say, okay, I'm going to get my subconscious and like be in that state of mind, but still be very consciously awake. Does that make sense? Suggestion, listen to music, eyes closed, see if you see new pictures in your head and draw on that. Oh, that's great. Absolutely. Listening to music is a great way to get into that flow state of consciousness, and it helps you get down into theta state. Not like super jarring. I don't know. I wouldn't say not super jarring music because I used to listen to dubstep and get into that state. So like whatever your vibe is, whatever's relaxing to you. That's why we have to be like really mindful of what we are watching on social media if you're doing doom scrolling, and what you're watching on television, because those things get you into theta state. And theta state is when your subconscious is the most open to suggestion. So that's like you getting programmed and stuff like slipping back there, like lack mentality, people talking about doom and gloom stuff, you know what I mean? It starts to become your reality. So you gotta like really mindful when you are doom scrolling either on TikTok or whatever socials, or watching television. Okay, I'm gonna go back up here. And I don't want to say that to like scare anybody. You just so you're like aware of you know, the words like TV programming, like that's like for real. Okay. Yeah, gotta protect your aura. Absolutely. Like you are literally building your reality around you based on like what you are consuming. Like I the other day I realized I was consuming a lot of like not necessarily like fear content, but it was like not the healthiest mindset content. And then I had a direct correlation with the amount of money that I made last month. Like you got because it'll get you into like lower frequency states and looking at the world and yourself in like completely different lenses, and it affects many different areas of your life. You definitely said it as I was typing out, like attracts like, for sure. Yeah, the universe works like an algorithm. Like what you put in is what you get out, and vice versa. So, I finally got to see my aura in the mirror and shocked at how dim it was. You can, yeah, I mean, I think that we kind of like go in and out of states with our auric field, where sometimes it's like sludgy and then sometimes it's like real shining bright. I think that has like a direct correlation with like how your mindset's doing, like how are you taking care of your physical vessel, like are you drinking a lot of water, are you watching a lot of like drama filled stuff on TV. So even though it was like dim in that moment, I would ask yourself like how are you feeling like overall in life right now, because it might be a completely different experience if you look at it when you're like vibing high, right? It might have just been like an energetic snapshot that you were seeing. So I wouldn't be too like guilty or shameful over yourself because we're like human and like we're not always like vibing high. I spent a lot of time with toxic folks, unfortunately, and I was in a panic attack. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like it just your auric field can like really shift depending on like what the context is. So it might be shining bright tomorrow. I think that's a really good indicator for you though, to see like where your personal vibration is at, to go look in the mirror and do that kind of like external validation check, but not attaching too deeply to like being shameful and guilty if it's not shining bright, if that makes sense, because this is just not how human life works. And I'm sorry about your toxic family, that sucks. Or not family, but people. I'm having panic attacks. Dang, I'm sorry, Shayna. I used to have like major panic attacks all the time. Like super, super, super bad panic attacks. There's a lot of different reasons that light workers have panic attacks. What do you think is fueling those? Learning to regulate your central nervous system, that was one of the biggest helpers for me to stop having panic attacks and learning how to process my emotions, because usually that's the spur of the panic attack, is like your fight or flight gets kicked on because we're not processing through whatever our body is trying to tell us is out of alignment. That's not always the case though. Like sometimes people have like medical things or like chemical imbalances. Not you, Shayna, just, you know, people. Yeah, it can be really scary. Panic attacks can be super intense. Like it feels like you're dying. Like it feels like you're having a heart attack. Like it's very intense. I used to have them all the time. But it was because of my anxiety and depression during that time. Or not being aware of being a light worker or neurodivergent, because I didn't realize like how much stuff I was taking on from other people. And so like if your auric field and your energy field are too open, you're what's the word I'm looking for? Overloading your central nervous system with other people's stuff. Oh, thank you for the follow. Great faith. So like if you're hanging around a lot of toxic people, and you're not having a good handle on your channels and your auric field and your light field, it's just basically like sending your central nervous system into shock, because you're taking on everybody's like anger and negativity and stuff. I don't think that we realize sometimes like how much other people's energy fields affect ours. It can really like throw you into like a loop. Handling big emotions, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, all key parts of self-development. Yeah. If you go through my TikTok, I'll be talking about processing your emotions all day, every day. And how to handle those like big emotions, because it's scary when you're like feeling very intense fear or anxiety or sadness, anger, rage. Like there's a lot of us that we're not taught how to process our emotions. or we didn't have safe space to do that because we had parents or guardians or teachers that were a threat to us and told us to lock it down. And so a lot of us have been living disassociated from our emotions for a long time. And so, like, we analyze our emotions, but we don't actually, like, feel them because, well, I'll give an example. So the other day I was doing a Akashic record reading with somebody, and, oh, thank you, Nicole, you're so sweet. I was doing an Akashic record reading with somebody the other day, and when she was a child, like, her parents would basically tell her, like, you need to get it together. Like, anytime any type of, like, emotional stuff came up, and then, and she would be punished if she felt too much into her emotions, and then she got into narcissistic, abusive relationships, and then the same thing happened again, where her partners would say, like, you know, everybody knows. Just say all these things. So her physical body was holding all this PTSD and trauma that was telling her, if you feel your emotions, that means that you are going to be emotionally and physically hurt. And so anytime she would have emotions come up, her body would go into, like, full panic mode, not just with lower, denser emotions like anger and fear and sadness, but it's like any emotions, like happiness, joy, anything. Like, she could never have any type of, like, elevation on any type of emotions because her body would just go in, like, straight lockdown. But that's because she had experiences, like, over and over and over and over again that validated her being hurt if she processed her emotions or tried to lean into that. So she's just, like, completely disconnected from them. The problem with that is that if you're trying to manifest stuff in your life and you're not connected to your emotions, they're not going to come in. Like, they're just not going to. Because in order to, like, manifest something, you have to align with the emotion that thing is going to bring you, like, the feeling. And so if your body is, like, completely disconnected from your emotions, like, that's why they get stuck. Because you can't align with that frequency. And then, you know, happiness and joy and bliss and peace and serenity and safety and security, like, those are all emotions. And, like, sometimes our body doesn't feel safe even feeling the good ones, right? We can't even feel the good ones until you start working on processing the heavier, dense ones, like anger, sadness, fear, anxiety, and all that stuff. Like, you got to process that stuff out. That's why I talk about all the time with manifesting. Like, that's the key thing that usually people are missing when they get stuck and they're like, why is my manifestation not coming in? Hey, Lindsay. I'm going to read back up here. Anger and rage have been coming up for me, but dancing, singing, screaming is helpful. Love that. I actually just made a video on my main page about processing anger and rage, because usually under anger and rage is sadness, and those type of things are trying to alert you that something is out of alignment. So, like, validating that it's okay to feel angry and rage is, like, the first step in processing it, because a lot of us feel, like, shameful and guilty of, like, oh, I shouldn't feel this. Like, your feelings are your feelings. Like, they just want to be seen, heard, and validated, and, like, loved unconditionally. Doesn't matter which one, just, like, validate that it is okay to feel that way. Now, do you have to stay in that frequency? No, but validating helps you start to move through, right? So, Eliana, that sounds like where you're at. Like, validating, but then also helping it process through. We gotta ask yourself, like, you gotta dig deeper into the emotions and realize they're just an alert system. They're literally just trying to tell you something is out of alignment. It has nothing to do with you as far as, like, your attachment to them. Like, we are channeling emotions. We are not our emotions. Like, we are a neutral state. If you're experiencing happiness, anger, frustration, like, whatever emotion, like, you are channeling that experience. So, like, detach from the feelings of, like, shame and guilt. Like, it's just an experience. It is not who you are, right? Being part of, like, a human is just experiencing emotions, if you will. And, like, there's room and place for quote unquote negative emotions too, because you can't feel happiness and bliss and peace and serenity without knowing what anger and fear and frustration and lack are. Like you cannot thrive and soar in life if you do not feel the icky, nasty, yucky ones too. Like, you have to have a backboard, springboard to know like what you don't want. It's like kind of like what Abraham Hicks talks about, like needing contrast, right? So once you start to detach from attachment to these things and just be like, yeah, I'm super sad right now. Like, I'm so incredibly sad right now, and that's totally fine, because obviously there's like forward movement that I can make in my life, and this is just something I'm experiencing right this second, but it's not going to be my forever. What is this trying to tell me? Why is this here? What is it trying to teach me? And then also still processing it through your body, you'll move through it a lot quicker. Because there was like times where I was like, there's so many of us that are afraid to feel our emotions because we're worried that it's going to zap us back into anxiety and depression. Not processing your emotions is what causes anxiety and depression. Not all the time. Okay, I'm not a licensed therapist or a medical practitioner. Okay, and sometimes people have chemical imbalances, but most of the time it's unprocessed emotions. They become hard and dense and stagnant, and then you get stuck in life. And then here comes the anxiety and depression. So the thing that we're running away from is actually the cure for us to move forward. And that's a lesson, that's a hard lesson that I had to learn in my life. I would just like stuff it all down. And then I had anxiety and depression and an eating disorder and body dysmorphia, and I had like this whole life that I had built around me that was like way not in alignment with who I was. Was that my fault? No, because I had a very traumatic childhood and I was taught those things or not taught those things, but you got to make an investment in yourself. Okay, and power through some of that stuff sometimes. It's not an overnight thing, right? It took me years to do that. So you just gotta take it one day at a time, but you have to like actively make forward movement on it, right? I come across like so many people that are like stuck, and I'm like, well, what are you doing about it? Like, you have to like take action steps. That might be you watching some videos on YouTube about processing your emotions or regulating your central nervous system or inner child healing, trauma healing. Like, you don't have to be a licensed psychologist to heal yourself. Okay? You can do self-healing, or you can find a mentor, or you can find a coach, or you can find healers on TikTok. Right? Okay, I'm gonna go back up here because I feel like I missed a whole bunch of stuff. Thank y'all for the follows. I appreciate that. Stagnation literally locks you into disassociation. Absolutely. When you feel stuck and stagnant in life, it really makes you like check out and disassociate, because you get in this like behavioral pattern cycle where you're doing a lot of like self-sabotaging behaviors, and then it makes it worse, like the anxiety and depression, and then like you just like kind of like really like fall into powerless mode, and it is a deep hole to pull yourself out of sometimes. Okay. So I totally get it. I've been there multiple times. Sometimes they're more intense than others, and everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through their own phase of stuckness, because stuckness is the space in which you experience the most amount of growth. You ever get like so fed up with yourself and you're just like, I'm tired of my BS? And then you like pick it up and get it together. Sometimes you just need to have that life experience so you can grow. Yeah, I tell myself it's okay and I'm safe. I haven't quite figured out what is triggering it yet. The anger and the rage. Something that really helped me is, here, let me light this sage and then so we'll talk about how to process some of this stuff. So, what really helped me with processing my emotions is one, and I'll read the comments in just a second. I paused it for a second. Recognizing that I am not that emotion. That emotion is channeling through me to alert me to something, and then you have to make time for your emotions. Like, we need to have a debrief with our emotions. Like, when I'm feeling very deep feelings of sadness and anger and like loss and frustration, I go and have like a date almost with that emotion. I say, can you tell me what's going on? like, why are we experiencing this? Because when you do that, now it's a two-way street conversation. Instead of you just screaming at it, you're like actually asking the consciousness of your subconscious and that emotion like to give you feedback. It's really wild like when you do that, because one, you're detaching from it but still experiencing it. Like we're still processing it through our body, because a lot of us are just like analyzing our emotions. You still have to feel them in your body, but it's different when you take a step back and you say, okay, I'm here to help us process through this. So now it's almost like you're talking to an inner child within you, because most of our emotions that haven't been processed are coming from childhood. Like anger, rage, all these behavioral patterns, people-pleasing, hyper-independence, abandonment and trust wounds. Like a lot of these heavy, dense emotions that we feel in adulthood are rooted in inner children within us. And so if you speak to them like that, not only is it helping you process in the moment, it's helping your inner children release from those things, because now we're working layerly back through our Akashic records, doing like very deep internal work. Like it's almost like a 2-for-1 deal. Okay, such a wild experience we all chose. Yes. Interview your emotions, if you will. Like you still have to like, can't disconnect and turn it into a logical, analytical thing. You're still going to have to feel it in your body. But now it's a little bit easier because we're saying, I am not that emotion, but I will experience it with you. If that makes sense. I'm trying to go on... Oop. Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm trying to go on walks at night to keep positive. That's great. Going out in nature can also help you process your emotions, because it helps you detach a little bit from what's going on. Like, there's so many of us that get triggered in our emotional states, and then we have PTSD trauma in our body. So when you feel that emotion, it zaps you back to that PTSD moment, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And now your central nervous system is kicked on. Now we're catastrophizing, self-limiting beliefs, negativity lands. And so anytime that you can evoke your physical body into some type of movement, it gets you out of that catastrophizing fight or flight state. You have to get stress cortisol out of your body. It doesn't just go away. Yes, these cycles are hard to break out of. Yeah, it takes time and like actively doing things about it too. That's the hole I'm trying to get myself out of. Yes, hello. I found that people have a hard time connecting enough to talk to the emotions. Let me try the emotions code list. I love that. Let me show y'all a tool that's like super beneficial if you have a hard time naming your emotions, because there's like the foundational ones, right? Like frustration, like anger, grief, shame, guilt, right? But then there's sub emotions up under that. And if you can put like a very specific name to it, that can help you process and figure out where it's coming from. Oh, hey, Kimberly. Hey, I love you. Have a safe drive to your farm. And I'll get back to our text soon. What am I looking at? Okay. Okay. So if you go on Google, and you type in emotions chart, so this will have like the core emotions. So here we have fear, disgust, anger, sad, happy, surprise in the center. But then if you follow them, it gives you like more detail about how you might be feeling, like more specific. So we'll do one together. Okay. So you just look up emotions chart on Google. So let's do fear. Okay. So, oh my God, fear. A subsect of that might be scared, anxious, insecure, weak, rejected, and threatened. Okay, so that's the next layer. The next one under that is helpless, frightened, overwhelmed, worried, inadequate, inferior, worthless, exposed, nervous, persecuted, excluded, insignificant. So now we can get hyper clear on what is causing these feelings. Because if you just say fear, that could mean a gajillion, bazillion different things. But if you have like, okay, well, I'm feeling inadequate, now we can start to like trace back why we feel that way. Where is that coming from? Who is making us feel that way? What is making us feel that way, right? Highly recommend looking at that if we're having a hard time expressing like, or figuring out like why we're feeling that way. Eliana, that might be really good for you if you're still in here too with that anger and frustration and rage. Maybe look at the chart and see what the sub feeling is, because now we have more clarity on where it's coming from. Yeah, feeling emotion chart. You just go on Google emotion chart. And something like real quick, if you're experiencing some like heavy emotions that are like popping up all of a sudden, pull out the chart and be like, okay, what is it actually trying to tell me? I keep eating at night, so a walk can keep me focused. Okay, that's like a 2-for-1 deal. Like keeping you from the kitchen and getting some like good exercise in. Hey. Just in case no one has told you today, you are loved, validated, and appreciated. I'm so proud of you. Oh, that is so sweet. Okay. Yep, was just about to make note of that. The emotion chart. Yeah, I should make a video on that on my TikTok, because I feel like a lot of people don't know about that tool, and it's very helpful when you're struggling putting a name on it. Okay. But you got to realize too, like when you are doing type of deep trauma work, like inner child healing, that is not something that can be done overnight. Like that stuff works in layers. Like that is like PTSD that you're pulling up, which if you have disassociated from your emotions for a long period of time, can be very shocking for your body. Like when I first started doing inner child healing work, I couldn't do that for very long periods of time, because it was just like so much attached to those memories, and it would cause my body to go in fight or flight. I could only do it like in little chunk periods at a time. Like I'm talking like 5 or 10 minutes thinking about something and letting that process through, right? So don't feel like, you know, you have to be at some certain type of level. You gotta take it like in your time, but you gotta actively keep working at it, right? It's not something that just like heals itself. And like now, I can process emotions a lot more easily than a couple years ago. Like the other day, I needed to ask somebody for help with something, like support with something, and my inner children got super triggered because I needed to ask somebody that I wasn't too happy about having to ask, somebody I have kind of like a past history with, and my inner children started panicking, right? I don't have the same relationship with that person now. Like we have a very good relationship now, but in the past, traumatic, like super traumatic, okay? And my inner children were like, oh my God. And then I started having all this catastrophizing come up and saying like, why can't you just get your shit together? Excuse my language. Why can you not just figure this out by yourself? Why do you have to ask for help? Why do you have to ask for support? Why can't you be better? Why can't you do better? And when all that stuff started coming up, instead of ignoring it or leaning into it and just like going all into catastrophizing, I said, okay, I realize that this is coming up because of things that have happened to me in the past, but I'm not going to attach to it because it's not my reality anymore. But I'm still going to validate my inner children for the way that they're feeling, and we are going to lean into the experience, and I'm going to be the higher self and hold space for them to do that. And then when we get done, we're going to go do something fun and get these stress hormones out of our body. So that looked like me on the floor, crying my eyes out, having like almost a full-blown panic attack, but still holding space as the higher self with the inner kids and saying, it's totally fine that you feel this way. That's valid. I love you. You are safe. We are in our bedroom right now. Nobody is trying to attack us for feeling our emotions. We are safe. This is the time where you can really lean in and process through all this stuff that y'all were not allowed to process during those times when we were in that relationship or childhood. So I'm going through all the stuff and processing. And then the next day, I was able to ask that person for help with no problem. I had zero attachment to it. I was like, it just is what it is, and I'm very thankful and grateful that this person can help me with this thing. No problem. But that's because I did that like preemptive processing emotion stuff, right? And held space for them to get it up out of our body. But otherwise, it would have been a whole different scenario. Okay. The moment I realized my nervous system was stuck in fight or flight, opened up a big door of healing. Absolutely. Some of us are living in perpetual states of fight or flight. You just triggered 24/7. That was me back in the day. Just 100% fight or flight 24/7. And that does major damage on your spiritual body, mental body, emotional body, spiritual body. But again, nobody teaches us these things, so it is not your fault. But it is like our responsibility to self to heal those things. I mean, I know you're doing that as well, Oriana. It is revolutionary when you learn how to regulate your central nervous system and process your emotions. It like will shift you into a whole different reality state of being. Completely different trajectory in your life. Like, I am a completely different person than I was 10, 15 years ago. But I had to lean into the things that were causing so much like fear within myself. Like, I had to lean into the cure that I thought was going to be my detriment, but it wasn't. It was actually my savior, if you will. Oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Okay, let me see if I missed anything. All right. Okay, everybody. Well, speaking of regulating your central nervous system, I'm about to go get on the treadmill because I need to get, like, you need to take care of your physical vessel. You have to, in order to regulate your central nervous system, you have to be connected to your physical vessel, like your human body. Especially if you want to be a channeler or an energy healer, you have to have a strong physical vessel. Because a lot of us get like very disconnected from our human experience and say like, I'm just going to live up here in my upper chakras and not take care of like physical version of you, when that's when we get blocked with our spiritual gifts, because your physical body is the actual channeler of those dimensional frequencies. Like, you want to talk to your spirit guides and higher self and angels and like all this stuff up here and be an energy reader, your physical body got to be in check in order to access that stuff and to hold those frequencies and get into your psychic realms. This is my current struggle, but you know this. Yeah, the better you take care of your physical vessel, the more that you can access psychically, spiritually, emotionally. Like, it's of the utmost importance if you want to be a channeler. Okay, some announcements. So I just put new energy healing sessions on my website. And so those are life coaching, inner child healing, connecting to your higher self. And then I have quantum Akasha alignment, and then growing your spiritual business. So I had them all like in one type of session, but I was like, that's very confusing. So they're all split up now. If you need something more specific for your journey. And I go more into detail about what those are and what they include in my link in my bio. And then I also have my mentorship programs are open as well. So that's Create Your Legacy. So if you are a high achieving boss babe who wants to tap into their multidimensional magic to create your legacy, like what you came here to do as the multidimensional self, but in this human form, like, what are we doing? This is if you want to kick your butt in gear. Because sometimes we need an accountability partner or somebody who's been there and done that and to show us the processes, because it'd be a lot sometimes. But those are open and available if you would like as well. Oh, y'all are so sweet in the comments. You know what? I haven't done EDM Reiki in like forever. I should do that. I haven't done one in a long time. That would be super fun. So yes. Thank you for the reminder. Eliana, I think that's a great idea. Maybe I'll do one next week. Eliana, are you in the Discord? If y'all want to join my Discord, it is Galactic Beings of Light. I would love to have you in there. It's a bunch of super awesome spiritual woo peeps. I'm going to listen to the podcast episode. Oh yeah, y'all, if y'all want to listen to a podcast that I was on, I guess appeared on Flow Space podcast the other day, and it's in the link in my bio, and we talk about finding your soul purpose, running a spiritual business, inner child healing, processing your emotions, and just a lot of fun spiritual topics. So if y'all want to take a listen or watch on YouTube, they're both available. I'll probably have this on YouTube, the replay of this, since